Welcome to the Forward Ever podcast, where we highlight African immigrant leaders in New York and make visible the interest of Africans in New York's immigrant community. My name is Yata Kyozolu, and you're hearing the sounds of Yakuba Sissoko. In this episode, hosted by Crystal Foretia, she takes us through the experiences of an ACT member who has chosen to remain anonymous as he discusses his early life in Nigeria, his identity as a member of the LGBTQ community, his journey to New York City, and activism in the wake of COVID-19.
Hello, folks. Welcome to the ACT podcast. This episode is produced through collaboration between Barnard College and African Communities Together, a nonprofit organization dedicated to empowering African immigrants in New York City. Today is March 19th, 2021, on a lovely Friday evening. I am Crystal Foretia, a sophomore at Columbia University. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Today, I'll be hosting a member of ACT who has chosen to remain anonymous. Thank you again for volunteering to speak with the ACT podcast. So, can you tell us a bit about where and when you were born?
I was born in Nigeria and some in 1976. So I'm quite an old man now.
How would you describe your childhood?
My childhood was, living in an African society. My childhood, it's, a bit normal. It's a place where you don't have everything that you want. Coming from a family of 11 kids and having different mothers, stepmother, in the same house. Your father had to cater for all of you. So we were from a middle class family. I would say that because that's what they call it in America. In Nigeria, we said average family. But we're from a middle class family. We get some of all the things that we need, just for what you need, no extra, no pocket money to go to school, no kind of bank savings and all of that. So we just, live, within our means, what our father could offer us. So I think what that did to me was to help me dream further, to be a better version of my dad, and wanted to achieve things by myself, to be strong. And Nigerians will use the word hustle, which means in any field you are, work harder, right? So I think that from childhood was put into me because I didn't want to live the way my father lived, So I just wanted to be a better version of him.
That's really interesting. And so would you say that the idea of working harder, would you say that was the value that you really took away from living in Nigeria?
Yes. Working hard, uh, that was one of the value that I got from my family, from my parents. And again, when you look around you in Nigeria, people honestly want to work. People honestly needed something to do to make money, even though the economy is not that good to allow all of that. But people honestly wanted all of those things. So I think that value of, working hard and taking that opportunity to strive and succeed, was one of those things that I got from my father, from my culture, from my community.
Okay, so what initially drew you to the US then?
The coming to the US, it's just a whole lot of layers, So I'll just touch a little bit of, on the surface area. It's more like it has to do with myself as a human being, my sexuality, being a member of the LGBT community and all of that. So, it's a whole long story. It's another whole conversation if you want to go into. So 2013, I took asylum in the United States. I settled down in the United States. And as someone who identifies LGBTQ, so that was where my journey started. So majorly migrating to the US had to do with my sexuality and because I identify as LGBTQ member.
Can you go a little bit more detail about the asylum process?
The asylum process, again, when you submit your claim or you find a lawyer, they have to work with you to see what your story sound like. Again, I think one of the things they have to establish is to make sure that your story is credible, that what you're saying is the truth, and what you're saying is what is happening on ground in Nigeria. But how can they know that? You know, having the same-sex marriage prohibition bill passed into law, you know, which if you're caught in the act, you are jail for 14 years in Nigeria. You know, so I think the lawyers, they have to, you know, get to know all this information to know that, okay, of course, in Nigeria, this is what is happening. And they can't go to your family to know how they persecute you or your community. But again, they need to get a general picture of what's going on. Is this what is happening to a lot of men who identify as LGBTQ? So when they gather this kind of document and, you know, they file for you, depending on how you want your asylum to go. Some people, some friends of mine had to declare asylum at the airport when they came into the country and they were detained. Others, people like us, were actually in the country before we filed for asylum, so we just had to go before the immigration officer and, you know, swear an oath. They ask you a lot of questions and they find out you're credible and they grant you asylum. So it's a whole lot. The wait period sometimes could be crazy, could be tedious, and you know sometimes it could also be a blessing. Like for me, it was a blessing and a curse because mentally I was very unstable. I remember I had to go into therapy for a while, you know, because again, African men, we don't voice out things. Again, being a member of LGBTQ, it's a whole lot for you to even voice out. So therapy was one of those things that helped me during that process.
Yeah, thank you for that. Can you
You're welcome.
describe your experience in New York specifically? For example, was New York the city that you initially landed in when you entered the US?
Mm. Um, the I came in through Washington D.C. and I came in for the International AIDS Conference in 2012. Um, Back home in Nigeria, I was an activist. I also work on the project, the Global Fund project, around 9 and 10, mostly as a field officer and the referral officer for Nasarawa State, which is closer to the Abuja area and some part of Abuja. So we came in for a conference, but again, that was when um, the the bill that criminalized gay people was still being debated upon. And because of the threat we were receiving, and we came in for the conference, and because of the threat, it wasn't, you know, possible for me to go back home because it wasn't only me, almost like six of us, right? So we stayed back, and God willing and God's help, we met amazing Americans who run nonprofit lawyers and people who were able to connect us to the resources that we need and get us lawyers to help us push these cases. And you know, so because of the resources we have in New York City, I had to leave Washington D.C. 2 weeks after I came and moved to New York in order for my case to be processed. Because again, in New York City, a lot of resources is faster here compared to Washington D.C. area.
And so you've been in New York for years now. Can you tell
Mhm.
us how being in New York has changed your understanding of home?
Oh my God, the city is amazing, and it could be a lot too. You know, sometimes it could drive you crazy. It's just this love-hate relationship for me when it comes to New York City. Oh, I want to leave New York, and at the same time, you want to live in New York. Oh, I want to move to Atlanta, and at the same time, New York have this vibe that Atlanta maybe didn't have. Maybe Atlanta is more laid back a little bit compared to New York. So living in New York has been an amazing experience, right? You meet people from all walks of life, different culture, and the kind of work I do, I meet people from all over the world. You know, I work in healthcare, you know, where I'm a senior account manager right now for my company. And I manage almost 50, close to 50 organizations for my company, which African Community Together is one of them. So clients that come to, like, for example, African Community Together, they need services. I could work with staff members and they refer them to us, and I get them medical doctor, maybe for mental health or anything, without, even if they have insurance or not, you know, because my agency can provide services as long as we are able to do the sliding scale to show that they can pay for it, that's fine. So New York City really, really opened my eyes to work with people from all walks of life, faith, and also gave me the opportunity to thrive, to learn firsthand from people who are experts. New York City opened my eyes to go back to school, the need of, you know, going back to school and being a person of your own and dream and work hard on your dreams. So love the city. I don't know if I can survive anywhere else. Again, I haven't lived anywhere else really beside New York like that. So I may not know, but New York City is just the mother and the father, the hash mother that beat you sometime and the father that pull you back sometime. You know, so just a long hate relationship. I love my city. I love my city.
Excellent. So, can you tell me about how you've been able to uphold your values as a Nigerian and as a Black immigrant while living in New York?
It's so culture is very important to me. Moving to the United States, one of the things I discovered was that I am Black. You know, in Nigeria, we're not seen that way. Most Africans don't see themselves as, we know we're dark skinned, but see yourself that you're Black. But in the US, being Black or African American now have new meaning and definitions. And the kind of energy that comes with that wasn't always positive. So for here was when I realized that I was seen differently, that, you know, before my character, you know, so that part I didn't like. That part is what I didn't really like about this culture where I live, my new country, my new home. But it's okay when you have human beings, you have challenges and you have things. The only thing that we can do is walk through those challenges. Being an immigrant in New York City, I think I was privileged to find places and resources where I was embraced. You know, that's the beauty of living in New York and being able to find yourself. And Housing Works, the organization I'm working with, was the only company I've worked with since I came in here. And they train people to be culturally competent. So, you know, to understand how to deal with people. When I first moved here in Africa, when someone is talking to you, maybe your case manager, your doctor is talking to you, you don't look them directly in the eye because it is looked upon as if you're being rude or disrespectful. But in the culture here, you have to look at people in the eye, which most means that you're listening, you affirm what they're saying. So me looking down when I first moved here, and I heard my case manager said in America, when you look down at stuff like that, it means you're not genuine and stuff. And I was so mad, you know, because again, so that's where being training people to be more culturally sensitive and competent to manage people is just the way to go. And in New York City, I see a lot of organization over the years get that so right, like with my organization as well. So being an immigrant in New York City, it's one of the most comfortable places I would say an immigrant can thrive because of the resources we have and also the things you could get out of the city.
So, you've mentioned the culture shock that you felt initially
Mhm.
being in the US. Can you tell
Mhm.
me a bit about how African Communities Together has helped you uh, with the culture shock?
I think one of the job that African Community Together has done this few years for all of us, not just only myself, is to create a community where you belong, right? As Africans, you know, from the continent, whether you're from Somalia, from Nigeria, from Ghana, from Togo, Congo, it doesn't matter. But creating that community where we all came together, you know, as one, as African from the continent. You know, because again, the crazy thing that could happen to anyone, you know, coming into a new culture is just that you felt you're alone. One, when you speak in the public, people keep doing ha, you know, you have an accent. The way you pronounce your things is different from the way it's been pronounced here. So you start having that inferiority complex. But what African Community Together has created for all of us is people are people are the same, you know, they have the same kind of accent like you know, maybe people from your country, they can only speak French and their English is not so good. So they make you feel comfortable, grounded. You have somewhere to go, you know, you have someone to call. When you need help, you go there and ask questions and they can point you to the resources they have, or your medical, your XYZ. So the organization has helped ground our people and protect our people in a way and create a community where we're thriving, you know, which is an amazing thing, which I think that's what we all need. Yeah.
So, If you could summarize, like, what does being a part of ACT mean to you?
What it means to me? Yeah, it that's like a mother. When a mother protect her hen, her chicks, um, act that's what it means to me. I would say that I'm grateful for the work they're doing, and I hope that their work will go so far to be recognized, and for us to have all the funding or resources we may need, or even have allies work with us. Um, for ACT, it's a place to go to, right? A family meeting to go to. You can talk about a community, but we meet often. But because of COVID, we no longer have our Monday meetings again, but we still have meetings on Zoom, which I'm guilty of that I haven't attended in a while. But that sense of community and being able to talk and have conversation, and having this whole immigration bill being debated yesterday. I saw the link flying on WhatsApp group. We will click on it and we just take into live to watch it. This is what our community do on the ground that people don't see, connecting all of us together to one cause that we're fighting for, which really, really, really is amazing. Amazing work they're doing. And I just hope that I will be able to contribute where I can, do my best, where they need me to help people, get some of the best services that they need.
So you actually touched on one question I was really curious about, given, as you mentioned, we are in the
Mm.
time of COVID-19.
Mm.
And so could you elaborate a bit more about how you and the rest of ACT members have maintained a sense of community in a virtual world?
Hmm. Um, to be honest, I haven't really attended a lot of meetings during this period because of a lot of issues with the whole COVID and the work that I do around clients. But one of the things I was able to do with a lot of African community member who needed services within this period were connected to services in my agency. Like some of them who needed a medical doctor, needed to see a medical doctor, or needed to uh, see a counselor for mental health and use it for immigration purposes, have been, connected to services. Um, with COVID, we all learned. It's just more like learning on the job. When it happened, everybody were confused. Medical doctor were, Dr. Bachi was, but we all learned as we were growing. But I think one of the things that helped us from the emails and WhatsApp group that I see, even with the Liberian community WhatsApp group, was the constant communication in the app and the constant meetings we'll have it virtually, African community together and on Docu Black, partnering together to have meetings, so seeing everybody show up and be on call was one way to, to keep everybody together. And on Docu Black, you know, reaching out to members who needed help, who are not qualified for stimulus check or who are having issues with rent and being able to give them some money. The early time COVID started was one way that both African community together and Undocu Black were able to protect our community. Um, so that is what I would say about COVID. I still know that with the vaccination effort, I haven't touched base with Aldo or other people to know what's happening in our community. But I know New York City is opening it up more, and a lot of people are becoming more eligible. And people should be vaccinated. If they need more information on educating our audience, that would be something that we have to do, some of us who are in the healthcare business. But I'll be reaching out to Aldo and ask a couple of questions about what kind of challenges that we have in life is something that we could create opportunity for our people to educate more. That would be fun for us too.
So you've touched on the issue of education around COVID-19 within the African
Mm.
community. Can you elaborate why it's so important for ACT to continue educating members about COVID-19?
I think it's very important because there's a whole lot of misconception with healthcare in the United States. First of all, the Black African American, many of us here in this country don't trust the healthcare system, right? Because of many previous years back. For the African community, it comes from fear, immigration, not having status. If I go into the clinic or maybe want to get vaccinated, they gathered a lot of information because those are the information Department of Health will report and said in New York City we were able to vaccinate 10,000 people, and this 10,000 people is tangible. You can see their names, you can see their addresses, you can see their phone numbers. Some immigrants who didn't have status or have papers or documents are not very comfortable with that, right? They're not very comfortable with putting all their information there. Will ICE come and get me or stuff and XYZ? But one of the messaging that I have sometimes that I try to console our people, may not be enough, is this is the era of Biden, not the era of Trump. And, immigration right now, it's too early to declare, that Biden is, his immigration policy is amazing. But from what we're seeing, it's a little bit different from the previous administration. So if you need services, take it. But I think they need more education around if your information is gathered, they don't share it with immigration to come and get you. I think it has to do with fear. And if those fear can be put to rest with data, with people who are in the legal services, maybe like a lawyer who understand these things, to speak to the community member during maybe Zoom call or whatever, I think that will help with the fear, because many of us have that kind of questions to ask when we don't have documents, and because you don't want anybody coming to look for you and taking you away from your family. So, and that's understandable. But again, with education and having data to back it up and say, I am an immigrant who doesn't have I get vaccinated and I'm still fine, I'm still living here, nobody's bothering me. Having that kind of life testimony will really help a lot of people step forward and want to get vaccinated.
So just for clarification, the main fear around COVID-19 and vaccines for the African community, as you know it, is the fear of being deported and having your your lack of documentation revealed, not so much whether or not the vaccine is safe.
Majorly for the African community, it's more for documentation. The vaccine is not safe is a concern for everyone, right? Because again, when the whole COVID thing started, we heard on the news it's going to take 10 years, it's going to take whatever to develop a vaccine that could, and all of a sudden, within a year or so, or before a year, we have a vaccine. And again, you have the African Americans saying, no, we don't want to take it because of our past history with. So all those things are not going into deaf ears. People are listening, even though this is our new country, our newfound love, we are listening, right? So I would say if I'm undocumented, my greatest up to 90% fear or 80% fear will be, I don't want anybody gathering all my information. If you want to get an African who is undocumented, uncomfortable, start asking a lot of questions about who they are. And that is what this whole COVID-19 trying to get you vaccinated is about. Sometimes they get a whole lot of information from you. Where do you live? Do you have social? What is your phone number? XYZ? Who is your emergency contact? And stuff like that. People don't like that. The vaccine being safe, again, is myth. Again, that through education can be put to rest. That again could be, I'm African from Nigeria, working healthcare. I've been vaccinated for the last 2-3 months and I'm doing okay. So that again can easily be put to rest. But that of being undocumented, again, we need a little bit of data, and also reassurance from what Joe Biden is trying to do for all of us as the African community and other immigrant community as well, so that they can feel more relaxed, and come forward and access healthcare services.
So beyond education around COVID-19 and the risk of the vaccines, what do you wish to accomplish within ACT?
That will be, since I'm not in a leadership position, I may not know what their plans about that moving forward. But again, I still want to plug myself and see if I could lend a hand where it's needed. It could be lending a hand where it's needed is to also see if they could get vaccinated with the organization where I work with as an account manager. And that again could be for me to reach out to the leadership and ask questions and see where can we come in and assist, If I'm in a leadership position, maybe I may know the next plan about their community member getting their vaccine, but I'm not really sure about that right now.
So, what do you hope ACT does in the future, like once COVID-19 is more or less put to bed?
I would say is fighting activists, educating all of us to like be our own advocate for ourselves and advocate for our communities and advocate beyond our community, right? Because again, if we are all free, then America will be a better place for us and our children, right? If only the African community is free and the Hispanic community is not free, we should also remember that we have the Afro-Latino. So who is speaking on behalf of those ones? So for me, I think that it's just more when you say charity begins at home, it has to start from our own home, our own house, get ourselves clean, that we could also uh, form alliance with other organizations to fight for DACA, to fight for the Liberian community, the Refugee Fairness Act, and all of those things. So I would say we will never give up the fight. What African community is doing and still doing is to keep fighting until those promises and those promises in the immigration bill that Congress is looking at becomes a reality for all of us. Having easy pathway to citizenship for many of our people who are here undocumented, right? I think this year, during this Biden administration, it should be advocate, fight. Because again, this is the time for us to do it. If Biden leave one day and you have the likes of Donald Trump again, it becomes hard. So this is the time for us to fight for our people to, get what they need and be more comfortable.
So, in Africans fighting and advocating for themselves, what challenges do you see lying ahead?
I would challenge when it comes to immigration. There's challenges everywhere, right? You're gonna have people pushing back. It could be people who doesn't understand what your experiences are. Of course, they're gonna push back. People who doesn't know the kind of job you do and that you work menial jobs and take pay cut, take very little money to do jobs that Americans will never do. They're gonna demonize you, right? And some people are not comfortable creating pathway for you to have citizenship, even in Congress. They rather put you there and create order fair and make you don't live your best life. So those kind of challenges, again, will always be there when you talk about immigration. But all we have to do is keep advocating. When you advocate, your voice is loud, it becomes bigger and bigger. Someone is going to pay attention. People are going to pay attention. People are going to push. So the challenges is not a problem, but again, is if you stop fighting, that's where the problem is, which I don't think we're going to slow down anytime soon. Fighting, it's in our blood. We're not slowing down anytime soon, trust me.
Excellent. So, given your experience as an African activist and immigrant in New York, can you go into more depth about the advice you would give to other African immigrants moving forward?
So, for me, my advice will be have the opportunity to belong to a community, right? Okay, we have the African community together. We have UndoQ Black. We have the African Services Committee. Belong to a community. When you belong to a community, you have relevant information, right? Information that could help you get your services, like getting your medical, getting psych, able to get a case manager. In my case, it started with me wanting medical services and also needing mental health counseling. And through there, in order for me to come back and receive those services, they provided me with a case manager. And from having a case manager, one of my problems was I needed to write my GED or I needed to go back to school. And that a timeline was set. I worked with my case manager. I was able to write my GED, was able to go back to school and get my Bachelor of Science degree in entertainment business. But it all started because I found a place, a community where I went to. I was referred to another place. And the place said, oh, We need to get you a case manager that will be looking into your case every now and then and be in touch with you. When they were in touch with me, they now saw the need that I had and they work on my need. And I grew to this point. But if you close up and you're not saying anything as an African immigrant, you end up just wasting some years for things that is there for you to grasp. But because you're not speaking out or you're not speaking to someone to give you the right relevant information, you can grow. And the longer you stay, you're not working on your immigration, sometimes it becomes a little bit harder for people who want to seek asylum. After a year, it becomes a little bit, harder. You need documentation to prove why you didn't file before the 1 year happens. So my advice will be find your community, talk to people about some of the things that you're going through, the challenges you want to overcome. Ask them for referral services that could help you with that and grow. Don't be afraid to say the things that you want or you want to achieve or the services you need. There's somebody out there who, know where for you to go and get some of those services.
Perfect. And one final question. What is your favorite American food and why?
Oh my God. I'm very picky, right? But I like, what would I say now? I don't like a lot of cheese. Maybe for health reasons, I don't know. But one of my American favorite food will have to do with some of Hispanic food because it reminds me of African food, right? Where you have the chicken, because we African want to eat our chicken and stuff like that. So I would say that's to do with maybe rice and beans and stuff like that, even though it doesn't really taste like the African jollof rice, but it reminds you of that. So there's a restaurant down my house. It's run by some of this Hispanic family, and they cook that something that really nice. And if I really want to grab something quickly, maybe burger, and I love my coffee in the morning. Sometimes if I don't take my coffee, it's just as if I'm not functioning properly. When I was in Africa, I hate coffee. But when I got to America, I love coffee. With a lot of milk though and sugar, so I'll be able to swallow it. So I would say one consistent thing that American culture have that I truly, truly love and do every day is my coffee. I would say that.
Excellent. And that's a wrap on the ACT podcast for today. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for speaking with me. I hope you all have enjoyed this episode.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Forward Ever podcast, a collaboration between African Communities Together and Barnard College. To learn more about African Communities Together and the many ways you can support our mission, visit our website at africans.us or follow us on social media. Our social media handle on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter is AfricansUS. Like, comment, and share. Forward ever, backwards never. Who are we?